Earthlings. So I'm just sitting here. My daughter was given this book this year. It's a really good one. She loves it, except it's slightly smaller than this one. This is the copy that was my son's copy that I found at my mother's house with many of his other books that we read a lot when he was little. I remember when my daughter was given this book by her grandpa, and I go, oh my gosh, I used to read this book to Zeke. So it's been very nostalgic getting to read Cheeky Little Monkey and get to see monkeys eating at the high chair. And he makes a cheeky little monkey mess. He's 9 now, and I'm so blessed to get to spend some time with him. Like, more time than I've had with him in the past year, and I don't know how not to cry the whole time. And I don't want him to think there's something wrong with me, so I'm just like, that's awesome, kid. Happy tears. And I'm just like really happy. This book he brought home, and then he shows me the stories in it he's already read. It's called The Lore of the Wild, Folklore and Wisdom from Nature. And I'm like, oh my god, this is something I would have gotten for myself. Like, I'm so excited. Show me. And he already showed me some of his favorite stories. So I'm going to intuitively flip and see what spirit guides would like us to learn about with the lore of the wild, folklore, wisdom from nature. The more he flipped through the pages to show me the stories he already read and then read them to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I freaking love this book. Intuitive page flips, flowers. Look at the art. Alright. We have right here by the little fox. In ancient China, chrysanthemums, the flower, chrysanthemums, I'm really not the greatest at pronouncing that, were linked to life and vitality because they flowered in fall when other blooms were fading. In Japan, the chrysanthemum is associated with royalty and is the symbol of the Japanese emperor. There's a little fairy next to the fox. Foxgloves are a beautiful but extremely poisonous plant and are said to be the favorite flower of the fairies. Oh, this is the one, my son read me this part. In Norwegian, the plant is known as the foxbell. It was thought that fairies had taught foxes to ring the bell-shaped flowers to warn their fellow foxes that there were hunters in the area. Flowers mostly bloom in the spring and summer months, so they are associated with hope and happiness, brought by sunny days and warm weather. In the Northern European, roses are considered the property of fairies, and so it is sensible to ask their permission before plucking one. Ooh, I love that. My daughter keeps just plucking all of these little flowers out of my mom's garden, and I am like, please stop. And then she goes, oh, and puts it back. And I'm like, I mean, that's nice. That's tricky. But then I'm looking around the flower pots, and there's plucked flowers with their, like, whole head of the flower, like, just sitting, like, there on the dirt where the roots are coming up, or where the stems are coming up. And so I'm like, been trying to get her to stop, basically, all summer that we visited here, then into the fall. She's still doing it, but not as much anymore. She's found more things to be entertaining now. But, you know, my mom's like, your daughter keeps plucking my flowers. And I'm like, I know. Like, yeah, we haven't taught her how to pluck them correctly. My mom comes in with, like, bouquets of flowers and puts them in all these water jars. And then she needs more flowers. She needs more vases. And I'm like, you got 27 vases right there. Like, anyways, so the book is just hitting home because we're big on flowers here. And apparently fairies. Which, Irish fairies, I'd like to point out on my mother's side, her mother's side, because the gardening really comes from our mother's side. It's, fairies. Fairies messing with my dad's garden, or spirit, however they put it. I remember my dad seeing a penny, and I guess it was a repeat occurrence where pennies would be found on the front porch step, and they couldn't figure out how, or like they couldn't come up with a reasonable answer to how these pennies kept getting there, other than like spirit meaning her passed over parents. And there's always signs and synchronicities when something is trying to communicate with you from the other side. And I believe if you just see it, look hard enough. I literally saw 555 when I touched it. Right as it went to 56. Burping. Burping for me is a sign that I just spoke some kind of truth. If not for me, for someone else. I remember my dad asking me if I left the pennies on the porch steps. I said no. And the rose bush kept growing towards the doorknob, and it didn't make sense because all the other flowers are gonna grow out and upwards towards the sun, towards the water. But this one rose bush right there on the porch would reach its vines, its little, its flowers towards the door, nearly wrapping, its vine around the doorknob. And it was a pretty big reach, and it grew just so fast, feet, like 3, 4, 5 feet of it reaching towards the door like it wanted to come inside. I didn't think they were crazy for it. I thought it's comforting to be reminded of those who aren't with us anymore in the little ways that we are reminded, or just, could this be you? Is this you? If your brain is thinking it, accept it. Yeah, maybe it is. The rose was said to have first grown in the Garden of Eden. It was originally white, but when Eve bent down to kiss it, it blushed and turned pink. In Northern Europe, roses are considered the property of fairies, and so, we already read that. The daffodil is the only flower to grace the banks of the Styx, one of the 5 rivers of the underworld. In Greek mythology. In Maine, in America, it was thought that if you pointed at a daffodil, it would not flower. But in Wales, it was believed that whoever found the first daffodil of spring would go on to find gold in the coming months. You know what? My favorite thing, when I was living, I call it Choctaw now. Like I lived in this house last year, well, for about 2 years actually. A little under 2 years. We would have hit our 2-year marker that December, but we were there for about a year and a half, and it was one of my favorite times in my life. One of my absolute favorite times in my life. And one of my favorite things about living in that house, which I talk about often, mostly to my partner, about how I miss Choctaw, which is really just saying I miss home. I miss the way things were. Miss Sonora. I miss Sonora too, of course. I dream about it. The daffodils that would bloom in the spring, I got to see them come up twice while living there. It's not usual that I am in the same place 2 seasons in a row. I'm usually celebrating my seasons in a different location every year, and I'm used to being moved around, transplanted, like a flower who keeps having to change the pot because she keeps growing out of it. And the pots are getting really expensive. If you're a gardener, you know. Crops, vegetables, and herbs. Stay tuned for part 2.